Thank you very much and good morning everybody. I'd like to start firstly by congratulating you all for surviving, actually. You've kind of made it through. The feedback from the front line is now that Shropshire is thriving. There's a huge amount of kind of sort of growth out there at the moment and businesses are under a lot of pressure. So hopefully this is all really meaningful for you and kind of exactly what you're thinking about in your business at the moment. I want to kind of just kick off by talking about drivers of change, and recessions drive change. We had a kind of mini recession as such in terms of contracted economic growth, but of course we had a pandemic and we've had Brexit. So in terms of what we're looking to in the future, what we did in the past is not going to get us to where we need to be. I was looking at some information recently on the rise of internet retail, for example. It peaked at almost 48% at one point of all kind of retail traffic. It's dropped back to 30-something at the moment. Work is what we do, it's not a place. That's actually a really kind of common theme that's percolating many businesses at the moment. And that kind of whole acceleration really of kind of change that was going on in the world of kind of digital technology and connectivity is kind of really, I think, been brought to the fore. So there's an interesting kind of trend within this too, which is throughout the pandemic, Shropshire's continued to see kind of record levels of things like housing development. We've continued to see a record influx of people into the county. I was talking to Ben from the DWP in the lead up to this, and he was telling me that our rate of recovery is 49th out of 370 odd kind of areas the DWP are managing. That's a fantastic stat. Mark Hooper was telling me that we're 211% up on bed nights than we were in 2019. I was on a call with some business board colleagues and business improvement district colleagues. Everyone was saying we just can't get enough people. So there's a lot of pressure out there, and that kind of change is at the heart of it. And in that kind of swing, what we've seen, I think, is an opportunity for Shropshire to really capitalise on that kind of thing that people are now looking for, which is that mix between work and quality of life. And we have a great offer, and the evidence is there that we're in a great place to capitalise on that. So that's something for us to really think about harnessing as, let's say, a natural asset. Any good plan, and if we're thinking about this new economic strategy, builds on your natural assets. It builds on the things that you're good at. So how do we capture all of that? Interestingly, we've seen a huge influx of people from other parts of the country wanting to come and live here. Well, what does that mean? What opportunities does that provide? What skills are they bringing? Those kind of questions, I think, are very relevant. I think there's another bit in here, which is we talk about, some of the changes as a council. It's not a spectator sport for us. We've actually rolled our sleeves up and got involved in a lot of things. One of the key ones that's most visible is our ownership of what was 3 real retail centres in the heart of Shrewsbury. And the plan was always to do that, not for investment, but to manage the transition that's underway in the high street. And that's proving really quite successful. And actually, we've really almost now got 1 retail centre and we've got 2 redevelopment sites. So that's moving on fantastically too. And by the way, footfall through retail, through the pandemic, has held up above the national average all the way through. Not just Shrewsbury, but our market towns have performed really strongly. So that's all good, and it should give us lots of kind of confidence about our position going forward. In terms of the green and digital, because that is the theme of the recovery really, and how relevant while COP is going on to talk about green, actually we come from a position of strength too. We don't talk a lot about this, and one of our challenges I think in Shropshire is to get the light from under the bushel and kind of swagger a bit in the world and talk a bit more about who we are and what we're good at. Actually, as a local authority, Shropshire is the 2nd biggest generator of renewable energy in the country out of all local authorities. That's a fantastic statistic. We don't want to be second, we want to be first. And we've got a huge pipeline of projects to kind of add to that. The interesting bit, though, is beyond the CO2 and all the good climate stuff, is that we're helping create a supply chain of skills. We're helping create demand in key sectors that are emerging. And that's one of the interesting bits here is, with what we have and working with other partners, what can we do to help stimulate that stuff that is taking us towards the new economy. So there's something about that that's really interesting. And we've got these kind of burgeoning clusters of kind of expertise and skills and kind of natural collections of some sectors. So how are we going to build on that? Throughout the pandemic and through the work of the task force, we've been keeping a close eye on kind of feedback from the front line and what's been the impact of Brexit. And Richard Sheehan particularly has been giving us regular feedback on what they've been doing in the chamber with chamber members. And that kind of sense of the bureaucracy around import and export and just the sheer level of support that's needed has really kind of landed hard with us. But actually people have done really well kind of in that sense of kind of managing that transition. And to some extent, we can still talk about Brexit as an opportunity. What does that really kind of mean for us? And we do work closely with representatives from the NFU actually, and we're watching what happens in the world of the replacement of EU subsidies and basic payments to the new kind of ELMS related system of agricultural support. But actually when you think of it, half of Shropshire dairy farms, for example, are already fully automated. There's a big shift going on in that world too that's kind of linking into food production. So, as one of those kind of big areas that define our place, there's a lot of innovation in that space too, and we're keen to kind of support that. I'm going to talk a little bit about, really what have been established by many people as the global megatrends. This is what's happening in the world, and this is a version of this is the 2019 version of that, because I haven't seen a version of it since. But demographics, we know what's happening in terms of demographics, in terms of aging populations. That's a global trend too. One of the things that we want to recognise here is actually, well, what opportunities does that provide as well? Actually, I was told yesterday that birth rates in Shropshire are holding up reasonably well. We're actually not doing too bad, thinking about that. But there's another interesting bit is I talked about that influx of people. What are the skills that we can kind of bring here? How do we keep the young people that we've got that are talented sticky? That's the phrase, isn't it? How do we want them to have a career and grow and develop in life here? It's an important part of it. The rise of the individual really is about the agenda for personalisation. And that whole bit about personalisation, we're feeling as a council, people want personalised responses, don't they, all the time now. We're all consumers in a range of ways. Now, actually, given that opportunity to kind of work in a digital way or in a different way and not be rooted to a physical place, actually that helps unlock some of the things that have potentially been a bit of a problem for us. And that kind of speaks also to then that change in technology. Here's a thought for you. Those children that are born today will be emerging into the workforce of 2040. Once they've been through James's College or whatever, they will be emerging as 19-year-olds in 2040. All of the research that's been done by people like OECD, Bank of England, Morgan Stanley, all those kind of really big, kind of powerful players in the world, say that something like, on average, when you overlay their analysis on Shropshire's economy, 47% of all existing jobs will either not exist or be fundamentally different. So the question is, what are the skills that we're kind of, what's that direction that we're taking that workforce towards? And in this strategy, what are the steps that we need to take to kind of build that economy? So there's an interesting kind of piece there about understanding where we are. And we talk a lot about, this isn't just about the digital bit, it's about actually that experience-based economy that we're really good at too. It's about some of those kind of physical things that we do, etc. So there's a really interesting kind of bit there about, well, what does that mean for us and how are we prepared? The public debt bit, you all know, the pandemic has kind of created a climate in public finances that we had kind of record level of post-war debt. There isn't a huge amount of cash. We were hoping to get more out of the Chancellor last week. We haven't given up. And actually, there's an interesting opportunity I'm going to talk about a little bit about, opportunities for further deals with government in our area. But the point is, we have to use what we've got really wisely to kind of help get the best outcome that we can. The economic interconnectedness and power shift is an interesting one, isn't it? And many people in this room that operate in global markets, that import-export piece, it isn't just a Europe question, is it? It's an international global economy question. So the point there is, how do we help people? If that centre shifted, as it did from 20 years ago, the centre of economic power sat somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. It's now towards Eastern Europe because of the rise of China, India, and to some extent Russia's power too. There's a little bit there about, okay, so how are we playing? What's our role in that global economy? I know that sounds kind of quite high level, but actually we need to think about that because lots of people are in that space. And then the whole climate change bit and resources is at the heart of that green agenda. We've got a climate change declaration. I know many of you in your organisations have got one too. We're actually performing reasonably well in that sense. We've just got to keep at what we're doing. And we're looking to be a centre of all sorts of kind of new technologies going forward. I'm not sure if a crook's going to come and grab me at some point, by the way, if I'm talking for too long. Yeah, right. So that opportunity for county deals, there's an opportunity here. Government have thrown out. It's similar to what happened in the urban conurbations 10 years ago, which is, is it a deal for some kind of growth? Is it a deal for delegation? Do we want some new powers? Are there some flexibilities? Are there some bureaucracies that could be got rid of? I'd like you to think about that because you could help us kind of shape that ask. I'll just pause. The wider landscape is also, we don't know what the future of the LEP is, but we're continuing to engage positively, jointly, to kind of help make the best of whatever that future will be. And that's all about kind of just changing politics of the moment. But there's an opportunity and we're going to go for it. There are 4 themes that came from the work of the task force that I'd just like you to think about too, which is about business resilience, sustainability, making our growth and recovery inclusive, but that healthy bit that Tracy talked about, healthy people, healthy economy, healthy environment, they're kind of the strap lines we're working in within the council. This is my last slide before someone does lift me off the stage, which is then our key 3 themes are this really, that whole pipeline of people and skills. Businesses locate where there is a supply of skills primarily, and we get that, and we want to kind of really understand that and work with you. We recognise that supporting businesses is about an ecosystem. It's about that level of kind of different layers of support, including things like, is there access to finance? Is there the right kind of support and advice? If I'm in a particular market, is there somebody that can kind of help me find a way through that? So we're really interested in building on, the capacities we've got in the Growth Hub, for example, and taking that environment forward. And then the locations bit is really, obviously there's a lot of focus on Shrewsbury. It's our county town, but we want to create a lift for all of the market towns and the rural areas. So there's a lot of thinking around also about how in this rising tide are all boats going to rise. And that's an interesting bit. Our economy is diverse. We've got a fantastic kind of broad array of different towns with individual qualities. They're, many of them are tourist honeypots too. Let's think about how we bring that forward. So you haven't grabbed my collar quite yet, Carl, but that's me. Thank you very much.